Here's Lillard back. Lillard around a Lopez pick. Crossing over. Down the lane. He comes. Boom! Chakalaka!
That's real man stuff right there.
And Duncan backed off to avoid being posterized.
It is tip-off. We'll run through last night's action, though, briefly. Major research on where coaches come from. We'll have that for you as well. Some eye-opening. We'll look at what it means for who the real candidates for this job actually may be, plus news around the league. Interesting life experience yesterday and other stuff. I don't know. Whatever we get to, it is tip-off. Pow. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Hope you're well. It's sunny and beautiful out, so I understand the glare behind me. I might need to close the shade, but it's nice to have the sun back. Nate Duncan, Basketball Insiders, and I did a podcast yesterday. I've grown to know Nate. He made an effort when he was out here in Salt Lake, and then we've kind of communicated a few times, so it was nice to have him aboard. If you get a chance, as always, after you're done listening to it, if you like it, please thank him for spending the time with us. That has become a signature of what you guys do as listeners to this podcast and part of our Jazz community, and it's a big deal. So thank you very much for the time that you do that. I greatly appreciate it. In addition to that, I'll post this later today, but I've finished a big research project on coaching and where they get from it, and I'm going to walk you through that today, and then if you need more of it, we'll post it in some capacity. I don't know if it'll be at We Are Utah Jazz or on utahjazz.com, so I'll have that for you. I want to share an experience I had yesterday. I don't want to override on this because our world right now is being dominated by Donald Sterling and Michael Sam, and understandably so. From a former program director standpoint of a radio station, they talk to you about the fact that there's a big circle of an audience, and that's all the people that are out there, and then you just have a sliver of the pie that are interested in sports, and occasionally you'll have a topic that widens your sliver of your pie. You have to be careful if you get numbers geeky like I do. I know I've heard Spence say all the time, no one wants to hear numbers. Well, what Spence is really saying is he's concerned that the piece of the pie is going to get very small if we do numbers. I'm not sure I agree with him, but his success has shown that he may be right on this. So anyway, every now and then you have a topic that widens the pie. Michael Sam and Donald Sterling are widening the pie. I had a interesting experience yesterday that I just want to share with you. I was getting my hair cut. As you can see, I had kind of for a moment decided I wasn't going to do that this off season, and then my lovely wife informed me that was not such a good idea. So I finally got it cut. I was talking with the person who cuts my hair, and they were asking me about the Michael Sam situation, and I frankly didn't know if I wanted to get into it too detailed with my hairdresser, but I gave kind of what is truthful answer that, I grew up in the Bay Area. I was exposed to a large homosexual population at a very early age. I'm pretty unfazed by it. And for me personally, I just view it as another human being that has different preferences than I do, but have no problem with it. So I kind of just rolled with that. Her response stunned me. She says, my husband couldn't believe it was a white guy. I hadn't thought about this. Hadn't crossed my mind that not only did we have a gay kiss, we had an interracial kiss, which is still an issue. Worth remembering that my wife happens to be Japanese, and we couldn't have been married for 20 or 30 years of the last 100 years in American history, if you go back and look at it. So I had not heard that, which maybe is a sign of progress in the fact that angle of the story hadn't been talked about, or maybe we're scared to talk about it because of Donald Sterling and everything else. I don't know, but it was worth a different perspective there for a minute, that this guy was more bothered by the fact that it was a black-white kiss, seemingly, than it was a guy-guy kiss, We haven't, and then she promptly dropped an N-word referring something that he said. So, there's a lot of progress that could still be made in our society. I just thought it was a worthwhile moment to share with you. I will let you digest this a little bit. Side note, I think this is really funny, by the way, on Twitter. And every now and then, during the off season, I've gone back and I'll check my mentions because I get a lot of really good questions. During the season, it's not worth it. But it was interesting the other day during the draft. I just kind of threw out a bunch of questions for discussion and digest. Like I like that. That story right there is a good example. Let me share this story with you. You digest it how you wish. It's interesting to me that aspect seems to be gone. And my favorite one that I get is stick to basketball. And I feel like if I could, I'd just respond to it like stick to being a loser or something nasty and just move on. But I can't do it. So it's just, it's interesting to me that the whole idea that you just discuss things is so gone. Please discuss. Marketplace of ideas, Madisonian marketplace of ideas. It's what our country was founded on, gosh forbid. Discuss things. Get out of your frickin' silo with one point of view and everything around you all the time. Thank you. Read redstate.com, read dailycost.com, read the New York Times, read the Wall Street Journal, read the Washington Post, read numerous points of view. Okay, sorry. All right, sorry. That was pent up. All right, let's move on. I'm crazy. I'm totally nuts. All right, last night, LeBron, this was great. John Schumann tweeted this out. According to SportsView, LeBron last night had 105 touches, which is more than Bosh and Wade combined. But maybe more telling than that, he had 59 in Game 1. He had 66 in Game 2. He had 70 touches in Game 3. He had 105 last night. Did he just went Michael Jordan-esque superstar, LeBron, big time, what this game is about? We need to win Game 4 to win this series. Indiana's up 3-1. Jump on. Awesome performance. Awesome performance by LeBron. Well, I'll tell you what. I watched LeBron, and he better have something up his sleeve in free agency because this is it. As this team is currently constructed, this is it if they make it. There's no way. Wade is a shadow of the player he wants. I mean, I think people have forgotten how great Dwayne Wade was. But he's a shadow of that player. Bosh is their second best player at this point. He's a nice player. I believe this. I said this the other day. I still believe it. I think there's a chance that we are going to get a I think it may be pre-orchestrated, pre-done. These guys have all been together a long time, and I think there's a real chance that we could get a deal done here that is Carmelo Anthony to Miami. I wouldn't with Wade and Bosh. Remember, they all played on the Olympic team together. They've all got a buttload of money. Everybody that I know that is really close to LeBron, and I have some great people that I know that are very close to LeBron, tell me that everything he's ever talked about and ever done are completely orchestrated and planned out. That if he really was honest about it, he probably knew he was going to Miami with Wade and Bosh a long time ago. It leads me to believe that Wade, Bosh, and Carmelo and Dwayne Wade may have all decided 4 years ago, hey, let's get the 4-year and out. Because we're all going to get together. And Miami's the team that they probably can construct that deal on. Keep an eye on it. I think that's what's coming. Eric Gordon in New Orleans says he wants to start next year. He was built here to be the part of the franchise. Meet Anthony Davis, and by the way, nobody in the league wants you. Mike Brown out in Cleveland. I would suspect a Mike D'Antoni possibility there. Dave Griffin spent a bunch of time in Phoenix or something of that ilk. They want to play a higher-paced offensive style of game. Mark Ivoroni, former Jazzman, was kind of a bust as a head coach, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not floating around there in some capacity. I would look for a more open floor type of head coach in Cleveland with Kyrie Irving there. Steve Kerr still expected in New York. Van Gundy and Hollins are interviewing with Golden State. Messina's storyline is cooling across the league. That has quieted a little bit. And then David Blatt, who I think I mentioned on Talking Sports the other night, as the other has just signed a 2-year contract with CSKA Moscow. So maybe he was on the a little bit on the burner for some of these teams, and they've jumped out to it. Draft news for you. Yesterday was that Wiggins, Embiid, and Parker will not participate. And boy, I was just watching Kansas-Oklahoma State today, which is the day in which Embiid goes down with that back injury. Man, that's got to be scary. It's just a baseline drive where he just puts his leg down and his leg kind of gives out from him. That back injury would scare me to the dickens if I was an NBA team, having just watched that play. I'm not a doctor, but I mean, just that play happens 50 times a year. It's he's had problems with it before. He's missed a game against Texas Tech, I think, by that point, and he goes baseline on a baseline spin. He does get bumped a little bit, and you can see his right leg just kind of gives, and he goes down, and he tries to play afterwards. He looks awful. So I would be, Anthony Davis. I have two things that really concern me on Embiid. What, and here they are. Anthony Davis is having a hard time staying healthy in New Orleans, and I think one of the things that's happened there is, and I'm not a doctor. I'm just making this crap up, but I'll say it definitively enough that you believe it. He was 6'4" until his junior year. He grows to 6'11", so he plays his senior year and all the AAU his senior year. He then goes to Kentucky for a year, and now he's suddenly into the NBA at 82 games. Plus, I think he played on that Olympic team. So he's played a tremendous amount of basketball in the years right after his body just explodes, and I don't think his body's ever gotten used to his size. Embiid, you have a similar circumstance to me. If he's really only played basketball for 3 years, this is all brand new on a young body of pounding a previous soccer and tennis player, and you suddenly have this. The other one I worry a great deal about, I worry about this a great deal with Ennis, and Gladwell's kind of backed off this a little bit, but it's the Daniel Coyle talent code, or Gladwellian, 10,000 hours. I'm a believer that you need 10,000 hours to be successful at things, or something of the ballpark. And I'm not sure you can accumulate those 10,000 hours largely in the NBA level. If you think about both these guys, if you practice, realize that if you practice, 350 days a year, 3 hours a day, you're only at 1,000. Okay? So these guys who've played for 2 or 3 years are well under 3,000. Cantor starts playing at 15. He's played 15, 16, 17. 18's the Kentucky year, 19's with us, 20 and 21 are with us. I would venture he's probably somewhere under 8,000, probably 6,000, and still and done most of them in the NBA. I think that's a very risky scenario. I don't think you can learn at that level. Now, Coyle, in the talent code, writes that you've got to learn where your Milan, I may be mispronouncing that, someone else told me it's pronounced differently, has to be working, which is your inside body broadband nerve center, has to be working at the elite level and very difficult to, in the hardest circumstances, and maybe that's what Cantor's doing, and so he learns in that sense. I don't know, but that worries me a great deal on Embiid. The new word is that Randall, Exum, Gordon, the kid out of Indiana, Ennis, McDermott, the kid out of Michigan State are all unlikely, or Michigan, are all unlikely to participate in the NBA draft combine. That's a bummer. I'm very interested to see what Aaron Gordon and Randall measure out at. I think this is going to be, the measurements are going to have a tremendous impact. In the NFL, they refer to it as being red-numbered. Johnny Manziel was red-numbered. He was of the wrong size, and it occasionally works. Russell Wilson has worked. But I am a huge believer in red numbers. There's a reason why positions in professional sports are usually sized the way they are. And anytime you are outside of the norm, you are really pushing your chances of being successful. And I am a huge believer in the red numbers. So if Aaron Gordon comes in at a 6'8" power forward, it's not going to work. Now he's a small forward. And then you got to decide what you do about his shooting. If Randall comes in as a 6'8" power forward, it's pretty hard for that to work. Okay? It's where, and particularly after watching that Oklahoma State-Kansas game, somebody like Marcus Smart may end up gaining a little bit of work here. First, I love his firing competitiveness. I like a lot of things about him. But what I like most about Marcus Smart, 6'4", 200. Let's see what he measures at, right? 6'4", 226, I think. I love it. Big, powerful, banging, ability to explode at the rim, take a hit. It's the NBA game. Trey Burke is a little red numbery. It's a little concerning. Derek Favors is close to red numbery if he's a center, not a power forward. It's worth keeping an eye on. All right. Dario Saric is a guy to keep an eye on. He will not be at the combines. He's in Europe, but his stock is improving. We talked about it once before, but it continues. All right, let's play around a little bit. I worked on this project very hard, and I want to share it with you. What I've done over the last probably month now, took some time. I went through basically every NBA coach. I was trying to see if I could get a round number. I couldn't, and defined a successful coach. So what did I define? It's actually about the last 35 years of coaching, since 1980. So here's the thing. They had to have won over various qualifications. Basically, the basic rule was win over 200 games and be 500. Over 500, okay? Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. There are 9 coaches that are either too early in their career, but have, I think, deemed themselves as high-level coaches and successful coaches, or they stopped. So Ainge and Bird just stopped. They never got to 200, but they're both great, very successful NBA coaches. Some of the others we're looking at, time will tell. They may be on this list too early in the process, but who are the others that are not at 200 wins in this process? Jeff Hornacek, Steve Clifford, I think Frank Vogel is under it. So there are still some pieces of that puzzle that need to be solved for you. I was trying to load something up. There we go. Here, give me 1 second. I'm waiting for something to load. Dave Yeager, Mark Jackson, Scott Brooks, Kevin McHale are all under 200 wins right now, and Ainge and Bird. And then I decided to include 2 coaches that are under 500 because of the fact that Dick Motta and Bill Fitch both won over 900 games in their career. So the basic standard is coach sometime since 1980, almost 35 years, 200 wins, 50% winning total. That right there gets you about 38 coaches. Then I took it and added that right there gets you, say that again. That right there gets you 31 coaches. And then I added those other 11. So there's 42 coaches. On average, they've won 58% of the games and won nearly 600 games. So they're pretty good. Here's the thing that were interesting to me. Number one, almost all of them were successful in their first job. The exceptions might be McHale wasn't great in Minnesota and Sloan wasn't great in Chicago. Okay? Here's the important findings for you. I'll give you all of them, and then I'll review with you the important ones, and we'll print this today as well. 57% of the head coaches, or 57% of the 42, had prior head coaching experience in some capacity. 24 of the 42, 57% had some sort of head coaching experience prior to their first NBA head coaching job. Now, 8 of them, of the 42, are former players who just went straight to the bench. So 32 of the 42, huge percentage, just about 75%, were either the iconic player who went or some sort of head coaching experience, assistant, and then head coach. There are only 3 coaches who were lifetime assistants and then successful NBA head coaches. Frank Vogel, Jeff Van Gundy, and Eric Spoelstra. One had Patrick Ewing to start, the other had LeBron to start, and then Frank Vogel has done just a good job with Indiana. But worth noting, only 3 of the 42 were able to go from being NBA assistant to just head coach. So Mike Longobardi is seeming to be the hot name this week. No head coaching experience at all. Dave Fizdale, Miami, interesting candidate. No head coaching experience at all. Very nerve-wracking to go do that, I would say. A head coach that was good at his previous head coaching job is almost always good again at his next job. Okay? Paul Westphal is the only successful coach to move straight from college without any NBA experience. Though Westphal was a long NBA player. So, Brad Stevens. Any of the guys we're going to look at this week that I've talked about. Yesterday was Bobby Hurley. Today is Tony Bennett. Danny Manning. Shaka Smart. Fred Hoiberg. Fred Hoiberg might be a little different because he was a front office guy in the NBA. But the college coach with no NBA experience has never been successful. The college coach with an NBA background, never as an NBA assistant, has only been successful with Paul Westphal. Okay? The pattern of success is, by the way, only D'Antoni, Avery Johnson, and Paul Westphal were successful early and then seemed to be less successful as their careers went on. It's unlikely for that to happen. So here's the conclusion. It's important for your new head coach to have been a head coach at any level of basketball prior to their first NBA job and to have NBA experience. Second thing, if you're hiring a prior NBA head coach, if he was successful in his first job or two, he will be more often than not successful again. And the third one, frankly, is that the John Stockton type has had success. Just the iconic, great player, Larry Bird, Danny Ainge, Mark Jackson, Kevin McHale, Doug Collins, Doc Rivers, Pat Riley, Lenny Wilkins, Don Nelson. That has worked. Now, frankly, none of them took 10 years off, though. So I'm not sure if Stockton's a good example, but that type has worked. So with that said, who fits these conclusions? The first one, and I haven't done all of my research on, but these are D-League head coaches. I've got to go back and look through some other NBA assistants and see if I can find some. Bob Bender actually would fit into this. I didn't include him. He was a head coach at Washington. It's important that your head coach have some head coaching at any experience prior to their first job. So Nick Nurse, who we looked at, Raptors assistant, European and D-League head coach for 19 years. Brad Jones, Jazz assistant, college and D-League head coach for 11 years. Quinn Snyder, Hawks assistant, D-League and college coach for 10 years. Jim Boylan, Spurs assistant, college head coach for 4 years. Pat Delaney, Miami Heat, D-League head coach for 3 years on the bench. Darvin Ham, and Hawks assistant, former NBA player, D-League head coach for 3 years. Alex Jensen, Jazz assistant, D-League head coach 2 years. Jay Larinaga, Boston assistant, D-League head coach for 2 years. Nate Tibbetts, Portland assistant, D-League head coach for 2 years. Dale Osborne, 1 year. Taylor Jenkins, 1 year. I just realized that I have a where that is. Somebody did an incredible spreadsheet that I have somewhere, and I don't know where it is anymore, so that's not going to do me any good at all. It has every coach in the league on it, and if I could find that again, that would be good. But I don't seem to have that. Darn it! I wonder where that is. I'll see if I can dig that up, because that would I just thought of Bob Bender, who was a Washington head coach, has been NBA assistant for some time, he was about, he was moderately successful to not great. So I wonder, I wonder if that fits. I don't know. Anyway, just thought I'd. All right, now I'm flummoxed on where that is. I'll have to go find it for you at some other time. It's probably going to take some sort of search. It's somewhere filtered, filed, placed in some sort of NBA stat pack that I have with all of my other millions of files somewhere along. So, but I remember that somebody did it. It was really, really well done. And I wasn't able to find it for you. So anyway, those are the assistant coaches. Stan Van Gundy fits into this as a prior head coach, not a current head coach, but successful. So Van Gundy winning percentage 64%. George Karl 60%. Avery Johnson 58%. Jeff Van Gundy 58%. Mike D'Antoni, Lionel Hollins, Nate McMillan, and Scott Skiles are those people that are involved in that are on that list. So that, using that research, those are your coaches. The 3 D-League coaches / college coaches with over 10 years experience. Nick Nurse, the Raptors assistant, Brad Jones, Jazz assistant, and Quinn Snyder, the Hawks assistant. Quinn Snyder, we talked about earlier, as the NBA JD background educationally as well. And Jim Boylan, for all the talk about him, there he is. He's a legitimate, real candidate because of his background. You can decide you didn't like what he did, but he's a legitimate, real candidate. All right, I don't have a film study today because of the fact that my internet in the house was out this morning. And there was a lot to look at last night, but I was going to take a look at the incredible play with Dwayne Wade to to Chris Bosh. But I instead want to look at the Tony Bennett, not the musical artist, but the son of Dick Bennett, the 44-year-old head coach of the University of Virginia, who fits into the mold of style that's never been successful. He did play 3 years of NBA basketball from 1992 to 1995 with the Charlotte Hornets, so he has some understanding of the game. He went to Wisconsin, Green Bay, was successful for his father there, and then started his coaching career. Assisted for his college, his dad at Wisconsin and Washington State, then became the head coach of Washington State from 06 to 09, and now is the head coach of Virginia, and has been incredibly successful. He plays a very slow-paced game. Sped it up a little bit this year at Virginia. Has taken Virginia from a 500 team to 30-7 this year to the NCAA Sweet 16. He took Washington State to the NCAA Sweet 16. He is he's a high-level college coach with NBA experience, so that makes him interesting. That's a path that, for what we just talked about, has not been taken very often. Paul Westphal did it, and most of those other guys have at least stepped in and been an assistant on an NBA level. He has not done that, nor will he ever do it. So if you think that he can be the head coach, I mean, he was coach of the year in college basketball in 2007. He was close to it this year. He's a very high-level coach, and I think he'll be talked about this year and mentioned. But it's a very difficult path by which for someone to follow. That is tip-off today. Thanks very much. Sorry for no film study. Try to get something for you tomorrow. Enjoy the games tonight or the hockey game sevens. See ya.